Political Philosophy, the Deep English Roots of the U.S. Constitution. In this standard, SSCG2, demonstrate the knowledge of political philosophies that shape the development of U.S. constitutional government. Part A. Analyze key ideas of limited government and the rule of law as seen in the Magna Carta, the Petition of Right, and the English Bill of Rights. William the Conqueror ruled as nearly absolute ruler, and his descendants did the same more or less. This changed as a result of King John, who faced a rebellion by his most powerful nobles because of his high-handed treatment of them. The rebellion resulted in a peace treaty between King John and his nobles at Runnymede in 1215. We now call this the Magna Carta. Eventually, even with some kings not particularly liking its limitations on their power, the Magna Carta became woven into the tapestry of English law because it established the rule of law as superior to the whims of kings. The Magna Carta is widely viewed as the foundation of law in England and English-speaking countries. Now, let's look at some of the clauses and how they affected the future of English law. Clause 14 establishes the right of people to determine taxes rather than the king. No taxation without representation. Clause 18 established regular legal procedures to determine property rights and to settle church matters. This also created the idea that these disputes should be addressed by courts sitting in the community first, rather than requiring expensive travel to a centralized location. Clause 20 and 21 forward the principle that jury trials are needed to fine individuals, and that the fine should be proportional to the seriousness of the crime committed. Magna Carta clauses 38 through 40 establish baseline rules for fair trials, that individuals would be punished only with the due process of law, and that justice should not be sold to the highest bidder, nor should it be delayed or denied to anyone. These provisions promoted the idea of a rule of law to govern fair treatment of those accused of crimes or involved in court proceedings. Clause 41 helped commercial growth by creating a state with consistent laws regarding merchants and established national control over trade and taxes rather than that of local nobles. The Magna Carta Clause 45 helped form a judiciary based on people trained in the laws of England rather than as simply patronage positions. Judges were also expected to follow laws rather than their personal inclination when making decisions. While the Magna Carta primarily addressed the relationship between king and his nobles, Clause 60 suggests the same principles also bind those nobles and the clergy, as well in their relationships with those beneath them in the social and legal hierarchy. Clause 61 provides how the Magna Carta is to be enforced. Notice the primary means is through petitioners coming directly to the king or the Chief Justice of the King's Court for redress of legal wrongs. The fruits of the Magna Carta are seen in the U.S. Constitution, its Bill of Rights, and throughout American law. No taxation without representation, requiring cases to be heard in the district where they originated, punishment proportionate to the seriousness of the crimes committed, fair trials and justice to all of the English, freedom of travel internally and externally about the kingdom, train judges who know the law and can resolve disputes by following the law and the rule of law over individuals, no matter how wealthy or powerful. The next touchstone document of English law is the 1628 Petition of Right. A bitter dispute over the power of the king between Charles I and his Parliament led Parliament forcing Charles to accept limits on his power. Section 1 reiterates the Magna Carta and requires Parliament, not the king, to set and levy taxes. Sections 3 and 4 also require the king to cease his arbitrary actions in punishing individuals through prisons or fines, seizing their property, or taking their lives without resorting to the regular court system of judges and juries. Sections 3 and 4 remind the king of the similar language in the Magna Carta, as evidence the king himself must follow the laws of England. Section 5 mentions the writ of habeas corpus, which required the king to show reasons in court through evidence why a person should be held in prison or be punished with death. Section 6 prohibits the king's attempt to force citizens to house soldiers and sailors of the king in their homes, and likewise pay for their upkeep. In Section 7, the petition prohibits the king from exercising discretionary prosecution of the laws, and requires all to be subject to the laws of England. Later, Parliament, after the restoration of Charles II to the throne, re-emphasized the importance of the great writ of habeas corpus and required Charles II to renounce any attempts to punish citizens outside of the regular court system of judges and juries. This was the 1679 Habeas Corpus Act. The English Bill of Rights in 1689 represents the triumph of Parliament and its rule of laws over the king. The English Bill of Rights was passed by Parliament after it forced James II off the throne. Like the Continental Congress does later in the Declaration of Independence, Parliament charges James II with violations of key parts of the English Constitution, as created by the Magna Carta, Acts of Parliament, the Petition of Rights, etc. After an exhaustive list of how James II acted illegally as ruler, Parliament charges him with acting contrary to the known laws and statutes and freedom of this realm. Parliament then acts to ban by statute the illegal practices of James II and also protect rights for English citizens. Notably, the English Bill of Rights acted to permanently end the power struggle between king and Parliament in Parliament's favor. Key points of the Bill of Rights are less individual rights and more to establish limits on the kings and queens and grant Parliament control over itself and over exercising most governing power. Now, here are some additional resources that may be useful. This concludes this content module.